Somewhere out there across the cold silence of space, alien commanders are learning one terrifying truth: never underestimate a Death Worlder. Welcome to HFY Deathworld Stories, where humanity shows the galaxy what we're made of. Wars, warships, alien encounters, raw human fire. The navigation console beeped softly as the small human vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Hayes checked the readouts, while his partner, Corporal Diaz, adjusted their approach vector. Gateway 7 floated ahead of them, sprawling station that looked like someone had welded a dozen different ships together over the years. Hayes had seen prettier stations. This one served a purpose, though. It sat at the edge of claimed territory where 3 different alien governments met. Traders came here. Information brokers came here, and according to intelligence reports, people who attacked human settlements came here too. Getting multiple sensor locks, Diaz said. Looks like everyone wants to know who we are. Let them look, Hayes replied. He opened a communication channel. Gateway 7 control, this is Terran Scout. Vessel pathway requesting docking clearance. Static crackled for a moment before a rough voice answered. The translator software turned the alien speech into understandable words. Terran vessel. State your business. Diplomatic reconnaissance. We're investigating reports of missing colony ships in this sector. More static than laughter. Actual laughter coming through the comm system. You hear that? The voice belonged to Commander Gret, a Kelrath who ran station operations. The humans sent a scout ship to investigate one tiny ship. Other voices joined in the laughter. Hayes kept his expression neutral. Diaz's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. Commander Gret, we're here on official Terran business. We request docking privileges and cooperation with our investigation. You request more laughter. Listen carefully, human. This station operates under Kelrath authority. Your people have no power here, no presence, no respect. Hayes activated the recording system. Everything being said would be transmitted back to Terran Command. We're not here to cause problems. We just want information about our missing people. Your missing people, a new voice cut in. This one belonged to Captain Neuros, a Viren mercenary whose ship was docked at the station. Maybe they got lost. Space is dangerous for weak species, especially when they build settlements with no defenses, another voice added. Like leaving treasure boxes floating in the void. Diaz leaned toward Hayes and whispered, they're admitting to the raids. Hayes nodded slightly. Commander Gret, are you saying that attacks on human colonies have been occurring in this sector? I'm saying nothing, Gret replied. But I'm also not responsible for what happens to trespassers. Your kind came to this region thinking you could just claim planets. The galaxy doesn't work that way. The planets we settled were unclaimed, according to all registered territorial maps. Maps can be wrong. Maps can be outdated. Maps can be whatever we say they are. Gret's voice carried clear threat now. Here's what you're going to do, human. You're going to turn that little ship around. You have 24 hours to leave this sector completely. If I detect your vessel after that, I'll consider it hostile. Hayes glanced at Diaz, who was already pulling up data on their tactical display. The station had defensive weapons, 3 Kelrath military ships, were docked along with at least a dozen mercenary vessels. Their scout ship carried only light arms for self-defense. "We're not looking for conflict," Hayes said carefully. "Good, then leave. Go back to your weak little colonies and tell them the outer rim belongs to those strong enough to hold it." The communication cut off. Hayes sat back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "That went well," Diaz muttered. "Better than expected, actually. They basically confessed to everything." "Yeah, while threatening to kill us if we don't run away." Diaz pulled up a star chart. "We could make it to the edge of the sector in 18 hours if we push the engines." Hayes shook his head. "We're not running. Not yet. Begin passive scans of all vessels in the area. I want identification codes, weapon signatures, everything we can gather without being obvious about it." "You think they'll let us sit here for 24 hours? I think they'll forget about us in 24 minutes. We're not important enough to worry about." Hayes began composing a message on his personal terminal. "They see one small ship with 2 humans. They think we're nobody." Diaz worked his console, gathering data on every ship near the station. "What are you writing?" "A report, very detailed, with recordings of everything Gret and his friends just said." Hayes typed quickly. "Terran Command needs to know that the attacks weren't random pirates. This is organized. The Kelrath have been selling information about our colony locations. They're going to claim we have no proof. We have their own words, plus whatever censored data you're collecting." Hayes finished the message and prepared it for burst transmission. "The question is what command does about it. We're pretty far from any Terran military ships," Diaz said. "Nearest patrol is 3 weeks away." "I know." Hayes encrypted the message with multiple security layers. "But we do our job anyway. Gather information, report facts, let the people with bigger ships handle the rest." He sent the transmission in a compressed burst that lasted less than 2 seconds. Anyone monitoring would know they transmitted something but couldn't intercept the actual content. "Message away," Hayes confirmed. "Now we wait." "For what?" "For them to get bored with us. Then we dock at that station as quiet visitors and do some old-fashioned detective work." Diaz raised an eyebrow. "They told us to leave the sector. They told us to leave in 24 hours. That gives us 24 hours. Hayes permitted himself a small smile. "Plenty of time to ask questions, visit a few merchant stalls, maybe have a drink in one of those station bars where people talk too much." "You really think they'll just let us dock after that conversation?" "I think they believe we're no threat at all. Harmless scouts from a harmless species." Hayes began plotting a docking approach. "Let's not disappoint their expectations." The pathway moved slowly toward Gateway 7 while its 2-person crew gathered every piece of intelligence they could find. Neither Hayes nor Diaz showed any sign of fear. They had a job to do and 24 hours to do it. Behind them, in the vast darkness of space, their encrypted message raced toward Terran space at faster than light speed. What happened next would depend on how seriously Command took their report. Hayes suspected they would take it very seriously indeed. 5 days passed since the human scouts left Gateway 7. Commander Gret had forgotten about them. Within hours, he had more important concerns like collecting docking fees and managing the various criminal enterprises that made the station profitable. The commerce deck buzzed with activity. Traders from a dozen species haggled over goods. Some of those goods were legitimate, most were not. Nobody cared as long as credits changed. Hans and Gret got his percentage. Captain Euros sat in a corner. Establishment that served various alcoholic substances, 3 other mercenary captains shared his table. They were celebrating 12,000 credits per transport. One of them said, "That's what the Kelrath pay for confirmed human settlement coordinates. Easy money," another agreed. "Humans don't even fight back properly. They have some security personnel, but nothing serious." Euros drank from his cup. "I hit a mining colony 2 weeks ago, 43 humans. Total, they had 6 security officers. With basic plasma rifles, my crew overwhelmed them in minutes." "What did you do with the survivors?" "Sold them to the Drachnia labor markets. Humans are weak, but they can work for years if you feed them enough." The mercenaries laughed. They ordered another round of drinks. Across the station in his command center, Gret reviewed profit reports. Thin alien with gray skin entered. This was Illith, an information broker who sold secrets to anyone with credits. "Commander, I have concerns," Illith said. Gret didn't look up from his display. "You always have concerns. That's how you justify charging me for information. I don't need." "The human scouts, something felt wrong about them. They left. They ran away like I told them to. They stayed for 19 hours before leaving. They docked. They asked questions in the commercial district." Gret finally looked up. So they were too calm. When you threatened them, they showed no fear. When Euros boasted about raiding colonies, they just listened and recorded everything. Of course they recorded. They went home to file a complaint that nobody will read. Gret returned to his reports. "Humans have no power out here. They're new to this region of space. Weak ships, weak weapons, weak everything. But what if they report to someone who does have power? Like who? Their nearest military base is 4 sectors away. By the time any human authority responds, we'll have already moved operations to a different location." Gret waved dismissively. "Stop worrying. Humans are barely worth noticing." Illith left without arguing further. Information brokers learned when to push and when to stay quiet. 2 hours later, Admiral Corthon arrived at Gateway 7 with a Kelrath battle group, 5 warships that looked like armored beetles with too many weapons attached. Gret received him in the command center. "Admiral, this is unexpected." Corthon was a career military officer who viewed everyone as either subordinate or enemy. "I heard you had human scouts asking questions." "They came, they left, nothing important. Everything involving humans is important right now." Cordon pulled up a star chart. "They've been expanding into the outer rim faster than our analysts predicted. New colonies every month, new mining operations, new territory claims. All easy targets," Gret said, "until they stop being targets and become competitors." Cordon highlighted several systems. "Intelligence suggests Earth has been building military vessels, real warships, not just scouts and transports." Gret snorted. "Let them build. One Kelrath destroyer could handle 5 human ships. Based on what evidence? We've never actually fought them. We've raided their colonies. They barely resist. Colonies don't have military vessels. Corden pointed out, that's like judging a species by attacking their farmers. Grit didn't want to admit the admiral had a point. Why are you here? To establish Kelrath authority. To show humans they cannot investigate our territory without consequences. Corden activated the communication system. I'm sending a message to the nearest human outpost. They need to understand how things work in the outer rim. He composed a message that was equal parts threat and mockery. It detailed Kelrath's superiority and warned humans to seize expansion. It suggested they lacked the strength to claim space alongside established powers. It stopped just short of declaring war, but made intentions clear. Grit approved. That should discourage them. It should make them think twice before sending more scouts. Corden transmitted the message toward human space. Now we wait for their response. What if they ignore it? Then we make examples of a few more colonies until they pay attention. Down in the Commerce District, Captain Neuros received the news about Admiral Corthan's arrival. He immediately began planning another raid if the Kelrath military was actively backing operations against humans. Prices for coordinates would increase, more credits to be made. He gathered his crew and prepared his ship. They would hit a human agricultural settlement in the neighboring system. Intelligence said it had 98 residents and minimal defenses. Easy prey. Neuros didn't notice the long-range sensor alert that came through Gateway 7's detection network. Something had entered the outer system, something large. The sensor technician on duty assumed it was a cargo hauler. Big vessels visited sometimes. He logged the contact and returned to his game of digital cards. The contact continued moving inward, steadily, deliberately. Illith noticed, though, information brokers monitored things others ignored. He checked the sensor data and felt something cold settle in his chest. The contact was massive, larger than any cargo vessel, larger than Admiral Corthan's entire battle group, and it was accelerating toward Gateway 7. Illith tried to get better sensor resolution, but the contact was still too far away. He could only confirm size and trajectory. Both were concerning. He considered warning Gret, but decided against it. The commander wouldn't listen. He would dismiss it as another cargo ship or mining barge. Better to wait for more information. The mysterious contact continued its approach, silent, unstoppable. In the bar, Neuros and his mercenaries laughed about their upcoming raid. They had no idea their last celebration was ending. On his command deck, Gret processed docking fees and skimmed credits from legitimate traders. Admiral Corthan reviewed patrol routes for his battle group. None of them knew that everything was about to change. The sensor contact crossed into the middle system. Now it was close enough for detailed scans. The sensor technician stopped playing cards. He stared at his display. Then he activated the priority alert system. Alarms began sounding throughout Gateway 7's command center. Gret ran to the sensor station. His claws clicked against the metal floor. What's happening? The technician pointed at the main display. The contact we detected, it's not a cargo ship. Admiral Corthan arrived seconds later. His battle group commanders were already linking into the station's sensor network. They all saw the same thing. A vessel 2 km long approached Gateway 7. Its hull was dark gray with angular lines that suggested purpose over aesthetics. Weapon ports dotted its surface like eyes on a predator. The design was unfamiliar, but the threat level was obvious. Identification, Corthan demanded. Transmitting Terran registry, military. Vessel, classification reads as battle. Carrier, the technician pulled up more data, ship name is Relentless. Gret felt his throat tighten. One ship. It's just one ship. One ship that's larger than my entire battle group combined, Corthan said quietly. The human vessel continued its approach. No aggressive maneuvers, no weapons charged, it simply came forward with absolute confidence. Sensor analysis, Corthan asked. A Kelrath tactical officer worked frantically at his console. The whole armor is reading as composite. Materials we don't recognize, multiple. Shield generators all currently inactive. I count at least 40 separate weapon systems, but the ship's design suggests there are more internally mounted. Communications incoming, the technician announced. A human woman's face appeared on the main screen. She looked to be in her 40s, with short dark hair and eyes that had seen combat. She wore a crisp military uniform. Gateway 7 Station Authority, this is Captain Ann Cross of the Terran Colonial Navy ship Relentless. We're here on official business regarding attacks on human settlements. Gret tried to compose himself. This station operates under Kelrath jurisdiction. You have no authority. Here, I have all the authority I need. Commander Gret, Cross looked at something off screen. 5 days ago, 2 of my scouts visited your station. You threatened them and gave them 24 hours to leave the sector. They were trespassing. They were conducting a legitimate investigation into the disappearance of 27 human colony transports, over 40,000 civilians. Cross's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried an edge. Those scouts gathered some interesting information. Admiral Corthan stepped into the communication frame. I am Admiral Corthan of the Kelrath Defense Fleet. Your vessel is in violation of territorial boundaries. Depart immediately or face military response. Cross glanced at Corthan like she was noticing him for the first time. Admiral, I'll extend the same courtesy you extended to our scouts. You have 1 hour to surrender the individuals responsible for attacks on human settlements. This includes Captain Neuros and anyone else involved in raiding, slaving, or selling coordinates of human colonies. You're in no position to make demands, Corthan said. Actually, I am. Cross nodded to someone. Off-screen, tactical display our current targeting solutions. On every screen throughout Gateway 7, tactical overlay appeared. It showed the Relentless had already locked weapons onto every military vessel in the area. Each Kelrath warship had multiple targeting lasers painting its critical systems. Even the station itself had several marked points indicating vulnerable areas. We've been in firing position since entering the system, Cross explained. I could have attacked without warning. I chose not to because humans prefer giving people a chance to do the right thing. Gret looked at Corthan. The Admiral's face had gone pale. You cannot threaten an entire station, Gret said, trying to sound firm. I'm not threatening, I'm explaining your situation. Cross pulled up a data file. Lieutenant Hayes and Corporal Diaz recorded everything during their visit. We have voice recordings of mercenaries discussing raids. We have sensor logs of ships that match vessels present at attack sites. We have financial records showing Kelrath officials selling settlement coordinates. That proves nothing, Gret protested. It proves enough for me to be here, now. You have 58 minutes to comply with my request. Corden activated his fleet command. Channel all ships, defensive formation. Prepare to engage the human vessel on my mark. His 5 warships began moving into position, their weapon systems powered up, energy shields activated. Cross watched without concern. Admiral, I strongly recommend you reconsider. You have 1 ship, I have 5 plus. Station defenses, the mathematics favor us. Do they? Cross turned to her tactical officer, Mr. Reed, show them what minimal engagement looks like. Yes, Captain. On the view screen, a small panel extended from the Relentless's hull. A single weapon barrel emerged and aimed at an asteroid floating several thousand kilometers from the station. The asteroid was roughly 200 m across. Small chunk of rock that posed no threat to anyone. The weapon fired. There was no dramatic light show, just a brief distortion in space as a projectile launched at incredible velocity. The asteroid exploded, not cracked or damaged, but completely obliterated. One moment it existed, the next moment there was only expanding dust and tiny fragments. That was a railgun operating at 3% power. Cross said, we have 18 of them. Would you like to see what happens at full power? Corden said nothing. His weapons officers were frantically calculating whether their shields could withstand that kind of kinetic impact. The answer appeared to be no. You also have fighter craft, Cross continued. Let me show you ours. Bays opened along the Relentless's hull. Small ships began launching in perfect formation. They accelerated faster than any fighter Corden had ever seen. Within seconds, 40 human strike craft surrounded the Kelrath battle group. They didn't fire, they didn't even arm weapons, they simply flew patterns that demonstrated complete superiority. Faster, more agile, more responsive than anything the Kelrath possessed. Then they stopped. Each fighter hovered near a Kelrath warship, targeting. Sensors locked onto engines, weapon systems, shield generators, life support. Every critical system was marked. My pilots could disable your entire fleet in under 3 minutes, Cross said. But that would be inefficient. I prefer you simply comply with my request. Gret's hand shook. This is an act of war. No, Commander, this is law enforcement. You enabled attacks on human civilians. That ends today. Cross checked the chronometer. You now have 55 minutes. I suggest you start gathering the people I asked for. The communication channel closed. The Relentless continued its steady approach, while its fighters maintained their positions around the Kelrath vessels. Admiral Corthan looked at his tactical displays. Every scenario showed the same outcome. His fleet would be destroyed before they could inflict any meaningful damage on the human ship. Get me a secure channel to Kelrath. High Command, he said quietly. They need to know what's happening here. Captain Neuros tried to run his ship's engines flared to life as he detached From Gateway 7's docking clamps, 3 other mercenary vessels followed his lead. They had watched the human demonstration and understood what it meant. "Get us out of here," Neuros shouted at his pilot. "Maximum burn toward the jump point." His ship accelerated hard. The crew was pressed back into their seats. Neuro watched the tactical display, calculating distances and time. If they could reach the system's edge, they could jump to faster than light and disappear. They made it 400 km before the human fighters reacted. 2 strike craft broke formation and pursued. They closed the distance in seconds, moving so fast they appeared as blurs on Neurosi's sensors. Warning alarms screamed as targeting lasers locked onto his engines. The fighters fired not missiles or energy weapons, precise electromagnetic pulses that fried specific systems without causing explosions. Neurosi's ship went dark, engines died, weapons offline, life support switched to emergency batteries. They were drifting in space, completely helpless. The same thing happened to the other fleeing mercenary vessels. Within 90 seconds, all 4 ships were disabled and dead in space. On Gateway 7, Gret watched it happen. The human fighters had stopped the mercenaries without killing anyone. Surgical precision that was somehow more terrifying than raw destruction. "They're toying with us," he muttered. Admiral Corden didn't respond. He was still trying to reach Kelreth High Command, but the Relentless had deployed some kind of communications jamming. Only short-range channels within the system were working. Cross appeared on the screens again. 48 minutes remaining. I noticed some of your criminal associates attempted to flee. They've been detained. That simplifies things. You attacked those ships without provocation, Corden said. They were fleeing arrest. Standard procedure is to prevent escape of wanted criminals. Cross tilted her head slightly. Would you like me to explain every regulation we're following, or would you prefer to focus on compliance? Gret made a decision. Computer locate Captain Neurosi's crew manifest. Cross-reference with station visitor logs. Identify anyone associated with raids on human settlements. His assistant stared at him. "Commander." "Do it. Pull all financial records showing coordinate sales. Compile a list of every Kelreth officer involved, providing information to raiders. That will include you," the assistant pointed out. "I know." Gret looked at Corden. "We can't fight that ship. We can't run from those fighters. Our only option is cooperation." Corden's military pride warred with tactical reality. Finally he nodded. "Agreed, but we do this properly through official channels with legal representation." Cross seemed to expect this. "Acceptable. I'm transmitting docking coordinates for a diplomatic shuttle. You will send representatives to the Relentless for formal negotiations. Lieutenant Hayes will oversee the process." The mention of Hayes surprised Gret. "Scout. The scout who gathered all the evidence that brought me here. He's been promoted to captain and assigned to this sector." Cross's expression remained neutral. "He'll ensure everything is handled correctly." A small shuttle launched from the Relentless and approached Gateway 7. Gret assigned a docking bay and sent security to escort the humans. Hayes emerged wearing a crisp uniform. With new rank insignia, he was accompanied by Corporal Diaz and 6 armed security personnel. They moved With professional confidence, Commander Gret Hayes said, "We meet." Again. "You knew this would happen, Gret." Accused. "I knew our report would be taken seriously." Captain Cross makes her own decisions about how to respond. Hayes pulled out a portable data terminal. "Let's begin with the easy part." Captain Euros and his associates, they're already detained. We need the station records showing their docking times and departure logs. Gret provided the data. Hayes verified it against information gathered during his first visit. "Now the harder part," Hayes continued. "Calrath officials who sold human settlement coordinates. We have communication intercepts and financial transfers. I need you to confirm names and positions." Admiral Corthan stepped forward. "This is a matter for Calrath Internal Affairs. It became a Terran matter when human civilians died." Hayes met the admiral's gaze without flinching. "You can cooperate and maintain some control over the process, or we can investigate ourselves. Your choice." Ilith appeared from the crowd that had gathered. "I can provide information. I brokered several of those transactions." "You're admitting to crimes," Gret said. "I'm admitting to brokering information sales. I didn't know the information would be used for raids." Ilith pulled out his own data storage. "I keep records of everything, protection in case clients refuse to pay." Hayes took the device. "This will be helpful." Over the next 30 minutes, a picture emerged. 17 Calrath officials had sold colony coordinates. Some did it for money, others because they genuinely believed humans should not be allowed to expand in the Outer Rim. Captain Euros and his mercenaries were just the violent end of a larger conspiracy. Cross contacted Hayes. "Status: we have names, evidence, and cooperation from at least one witness. Mercenaries are secured. Station personnel are complying. Good. Bring the primary suspects to the Relentless. We'll hold them in our brig until proper authorities can take custody." Corthan objected. "You cannot arrest Calrath military officers. I can and will detain anyone involved in attacks on human civilians." Cross's voice hardened. "This is not negotiable, Admiral. You are welcome to file diplomatic protests with your government after you finish complying with my requests." Guards began rounding up the named officials. Some went quietly, others protested and made threats. All of them were taken into custody by human security forces. Gret was among them. As guards escorted him toward the shuttle, he looked at Hayes. "You planned this perfectly. We did our job: gather information, report facts, let command decide the response." Hayes gestured toward the Relentless. Captain Cross decided that 40,000 dead civilians required a strong response. "This will start a war. Maybe, or maybe it will start a conversation about how civilized species should behave." Hayes waved the guards forward. Either way, the raid stopped. Today, Gret was loaded onto the shuttle along with 16 other Calrath officials and the mercenary crews. The shuttle returned to the Relentless, where proper holding cells waited. Gateway 7 sat quiet in space. Its residents watched the massive human warship and wondered what came next. Captain Cross provided the answer 30 minutes later with a general broadcast to the station. "This facility is now under joint Terran Calrath oversight pending investigation of criminal activities. All ships are free to depart or remain normal Commerce may continue, but attacks on human settlements have ended any future. Raids will be met with immediate military response. The message was clear. The Outer Rim had new rules. 3 weeks passed since the Relentless arrived at Gateway 7. The massive warship remained on station, a constant reminder of human presence. Its fighters conducted regular patrols. Its sensors monitored every ship that entered or left the system. Change came quickly after that first day. The Kelrath government responded within 48 hours, not with warships but with diplomats. They claimed ignorance of the coordinate selling scheme and promised full cooperation. Whether that was truth or political survival didn't matter much. Results mattered. A formal trial began aboard a Kelrath judicial vessel that arrived with the diplomats. Captain Neuros faced charges first. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings of him boasting about raids, sensor logs, placing his ship at attack sites. Survivors who identified him and his crew. He was found guilty in less than 3 hours. Kelrath law demanded execution. For slave trading, the sentence was carried out the same day. The other mercenary captains received similar judgments. The Kelrath wanted to prove they took justice seriously. 13 mercenaries died over 5 days of trials. The corrupt officials faced different proceedings. Kelrath Internal Affairs handled their cases. Some were stripped of rank and imprisoned. Others were simply removed from positions of authority and exiled to remote territories. Gret received 20 years in a labor colony. Human observers attended every trial. Hayes sat through all of them, taking notes and ensuring proper procedure was followed. Captain Cross reviewed the transcripts each evening. "Do you believe they're being honest?" Cross asked Hayes during one of their meetings. "I think they're trying to salvage the situation," Hayes replied. "The Kelrath government realizes they underestimated us. Now they're scrambling to prove they're reasonable partners instead of enemies. And if they're not, if this is just temporary cooperation until we leave, then we don't leave." Hayes pulled up a star chart. Terran Command is already sending more ships. 3 destroyer groups are en route. We're establishing a permanent presence in the Outer Rim. Cross nodded. She had expected this. Once humanity committed to protecting its settlements, there was no going back. On Gateway 7, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The initial fear faded into cautious acceptance. Human security teams walked the commerce decks. They didn't interfere with normal trade, but their presence discouraged criminal activity. Some aliens left. Those whose business depended on illegal operations packed up and found other stations, but others stayed. Legitimate traders actually appreciated the increased security. Illith was one of those who stayed. His information brokering continued, but he was more careful now about what information he sold and who bought it. Hayes visited him one afternoon in his small office on the lower commercial level. "Captain Hayes," Illith greeted, "I was wondering when you would come. You helped us, that's worth acknowledging." Hayes sat down without being invited. "But I have questions." "I assumed you would. You knew what Grek was doing. You knew mercenaries were raiding human settlements. Why did you help?" "I see." Illith's thin fingers drummed on his desk. "Business is about long-term thinking. I saw which way the current was flowing, humans were expanding. Despite the raids, that meant humans would eventually respond. I chose to be on the correct side of that response. Practical survival usually is. Illith leaned forward. Do you know what most species thought about humans before they relentless arrived? We thought you were soft, weak. You built colonies without proper defenses. You sent scouts instead of warships. You talked about diplomacy and cooperation. We still do. Yes, but now everyone knows there's an iron core beneath that soft exterior. You proved you can be reasonable, or you can be overwhelming. That makes you dangerous in a different way than simple brutes. Illith pulled up data on his terminal. Since your ship arrived, 17 different species have requested diplomatic contact with human authorities. They want trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, technology exchanges. Hayes raised an eyebrow. 17. Fear creates opportunity. Everyone wants to be aligned with the strong newcomer rather than against them. Illith smiled thinly. You changed the political landscape of the Outer Rim in one day. We just wanted to stop the raids. You did more than that. You announced that humanity belongs at the table where decisions are made. The Kelrath controlled this region for decades. Now they share it with you. Hayes absorbed this. What about species that don't want cooperation? They'll learn or they'll leave. Galaxy has room for both outcomes. Illith closed his terminal. My advice: maintain your presence. Continue showing strength, tempered with reason. Other species respect that combination. Hayes stood to leave but paused. One more question. During my first visit, you tried to warn Greta about us. Why? I told you long-term thinking. If Greta had listened, perhaps some of this could have been avoided. Perhaps peaceful arrangements could have been reached. Illith shrugged. He didn't listen, so we have the current situation instead. Hayes left the office and made his way to the docking bay where a shuttle waited. Cross had summoned all senior officers for a meeting aboard the Relentless. The conference room held 12 people when Hayes arrived. Cross sat at the head of the table with her tactical officer Reed beside her. The other faces belonged to newly arrived Terran personnel who would establish permanent operations in the sector. We're transitioning from military intervention to occupation, Cross explained. Terran Command has approved a permanent station in this system. Construction vessels arrive in 6 days. A young officer named Foster spoke up. What about Kelrath objections? They've agreed to joint oversight. Gateway 7 remains under shared authority. We're building our own facility 50,000 km from here. Cross displayed the plans. It will serve as headquarters for Outer Rim security operations. Hayes studied the design. A proper military station with defensive capabilities and docking for multiple warships. Not temporary, not subtle. Statement of permanent presence. The Kelrath are really accepting this? Hayes asked. They don't have much choice, but yes. Surprisingly, they're cooperating. I think they're relieved, actually. Cross pulled up diplomatic correspondence. They were losing control of the Outer Rim to various criminal elements. Our presence helps them restore order. So we're doing their job for them. Reed observed. We're protecting our interests while helping stabilize a region that benefits everyone. Cross looked at each officer. That's The narrative we're maintaining, strong. Enough to defend ourselves, reasonable. Enough to work with others. The meeting continued for another hour, covering logistics and personnel. Assignments. Hayes was confirmed as sector commander. For scout operations, his job would be coordinating intelligence gathering across multiple systems. When the meeting ended, Hayes returned to Gateway 7. He had reports to file and contacts to maintain. As he walked the commercial decks, aliens nodded respectfully, some even greeted him by name. The station that had mocked human scouts 3 weeks ago now treated them as legitimate authority. Hayes permitted himself a small smile. Things had definitely changed. 2 months after the Relentless first arrived, the new Terran station opened. For operations, they named it Frontier Watch. The construction had proceeded faster than expected, with Kelrath assistance providing additional resources and labor. Captain Cross stood in the command center watching the final systems come online. The station hummed with activity. 300 personnel now called it home. 2 destroyer groups were assigned permanent patrol duties in the sector. Hayes stood beside her, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. Pirate activity down 73% across monitored systems. We've intercepted 6 attempts to raid human settlements, all suspects detained without casualties. The word has spread, Cross said. Attack humans and you answer to us. It's more than that, other species are asking for our help too. Hayes pulled up a request from a Viren colony. They're being raided by the same groups that used to hit our settlements. They want Terran patrols extended to their territory. Cross considered this. What's Terran Command's position? Evaluating, but the political office thinks it's a good idea. Shows we're not just protecting our own interests. We are protecting our own interests. Stable neighbors make better trading partners than chaos. Cross approved the request anyway. Extend patrol Route 14 to include their colony, but make it clear we're doing this as a cooperative measure, not because we're assuming authority over their space. Understood. A communication officer called out. Captain, we have an incoming vessel. Unknown configuration, there. Broadcasting a greeting in multiple languages, including Terran Standard. Cross moved to the main display. A ship appeared on the sensors, medium-sized, with elegant curves and what appeared to be decorative elements along the hull. Definitely not military. This is the Wandering Light from the Sente Union, a pleasant voice announced. We request permission to dock for diplomatic discussions. Hayes checked the database. Sente Union, they're from the far side of Kelrath space, never had contact with humans before. Grant docking permission, Cross ordered. Looks like our reputation reached even farther than we thought. The Sente delegation consisted of 5 individuals who resembled tall, slender birds with 4 arms and colorful feathers. Their leader introduced herself as Ambassador Kira. We've heard remarkable stories about humans, Kira said during the formal meeting. They said you destroyed an entire pirate network in less than a month. We enforced law and order, Cross replied, with cooperation from the Kelrath government. Yes, cooperation, that's why we're here. Kira settled into a chair designed for various body types. The Sentha Union has trade routes that pass through this region. We've suffered losses to raiders for years. Kelreth couldn't or wouldn't help, but you did. In weeks you accomplished what they failed to do in decades. Hayes spoke carefully. We're interested in stable trading relationships. What specifically does the Sentha Union want? Security agreements, technology exchange, cultural liaison. Kiera listed the items. We want to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth and its colonial territories. This was above Cross's authority. I can forward your request to the proper channels, but I'm curious why you came all this way. You could have contacted our embassy on Kelreth Prime. Because actions matter more than words. You're here, you made real change. That tells us more about humanity than any diplomatic transmission. Kiera's feathers ruffled in what might have been their equivalent of a smile. Besides, we wanted to see the famous, relentless. Stories said it was the size of a small moon. Stories exaggerate, Cross said. Perhaps, but the truth is impressive enough. The meeting concluded with preliminary agreements subject to approval from both governments. Kiera and her delegation toured Frontier Watch before departing. They seemed genuinely impressed by human efficiency and organization. After they left, Hayes joined Cross in her office. 5 species have requested diplomatic contact this month. The Sentha make 6. It's the pattern Illith predicted. Everyone wants to align with perceived strength. Cross poured 2 cups of something that resembled coffee, but we need to be careful. Power creates expectations. If we can't maintain security, if we show weakness, those same species will abandon us. So we don't show weakness. Easier said than done. We're stretched thin already. 3 destroyer groups protecting dozens of systems, more colonies requesting protection every week. Cross drank from her cup. Terran Command approved 4 more destroyer groups for the Outer Rim, but they won't arrive for 3 months. Hayes understood the concern. We're committed now, can't go back to being ignored newcomers. No, we changed the game. Now we have to play it. Cross pulled up a sector map showing human territory, new settlements marked in blue, patrol routes in green, alliance requests in yellow. This region has more human presence than we did a year ago. All because 2 scouts asked questions and refused to be intimidated. Hayes felt slightly uncomfortable with the implication. We just did our jobs. You did more than that. You proved humans belong here, not as victims or supplicants, but as equals who enforce their own security. Cross highlighted Gateway 7, that station that mocked you. Last week they requested human security officers for their law enforcement division. Gretz replacement wants to model their operations on our procedures. Things really have changed. They have, and they'll keep changing. More humans will come to the Outer Rim. More colonies, more trade, more influence. Cross closed the map. Our job is making sure that influence is used responsibly. A week later, Hayes took a shuttle to Gateway 7 for routine liaison duties. The station looked different now. Human and Kelreth security worked together at checkpoints. Traders displayed goods without fear of theft. The criminal elements that once dominated had moved to other less secure locations. He stopped at a merchant stall selling information tablets and news feeds. Vendor was a small alien with 6 eyes. Captain Hayes, the vendor greeted. Good to see you. Same. Hayes browsed the selection. What's the news today? Terran destroyer group stopped another raid attempt in the outer colonies. No casualties except the pirates. The vendor displayed the headline. Also, Kelrith High Counselor gave a speech praising human cooperation in regional security. Hayes smiled, quite different from 2 months ago. Very different, you know what they say. Now, they say mocking a human scout is the fastest way to meet a human warship. The vendor's eyes gleamed with amusement. Nobody mocks scouts anymore. Hayes paid for a news tablet and continued his walk. He passed the bar where mercenaries once celebrated their raids. Now it served legitimate traders and station workers. The atmosphere was relaxed, peaceful. His communicator buzzed, cross-sending an update. Another species requested diplomatic contact. Another colony asked for Terran patrols. Another successful intercept of raiders. The outer rim was becoming something new, not Kelrith controlled, not human dominated, something shared, protected, stable. Hayes looked out a viewport at the relentless maintaining its patrol pattern, the massive warship that changed everything with a single demonstration of power. He thought about the 40,000 civilians whose deaths brought that ship here. Justice delivered in their name. The future being built because humanity refused to accept being victims. It was a good future, worth fighting for, worth protecting. And if anyone doubted human resolve, they only needed to look at the warship still standing guard over Gateway 7.